The Lobster by Yorgos Lanthimos and 1984 by George Orwell provide insights into the complexity of human motivation and behavior through their portrayal of ideas such as the way in which love and other emotions shape actions, and the differing reasons for rebellion. These ideas are highlighted through the use of satirical humor and paradoxical behavior, as well as techniques such as characterization and the connection between audience and characters. As a result, the audience recognizes how behavior and emotions can be manipulated by circumstances or context, and are urged to be wary of this change. The complexity of love and the way in which it drives human behavior is expressed throughout The Lobster in 1984, with both texts providing insight into the way love dictates decisions. Lanthimos comments on the way in which the complexity of human emotions is often suppressed or changed in order to create a basic or superficial relationship. In The Lobster, individuals allow their desire to belong in society to shift the way they act, and permit the longing for love to change who they are. This willingness to change is often highlighted through comedic elements such as extreme exaggeration of human behavior, and is shown through the character's excessive desperation to find a partner. David does this by faking desensitivity, believing it to be more difficult to pretend you do have feelings when you don't than pretend you don't have feelings when you do, and creates a new personality which leads to some comedic yet often disturbing scenes.
Elizabeth, give the nice man a kiss. He's a friend of mine.
The last thing I want right now is a kiss from a silly little girl.
Oh!
In exaggerating these ideas, Lanthimos draws attention to the absurdity of them. While David's surrender to change and pointless relationships shocks the audience, it also prompts a question: would you be willing to give up yourself in order to avoid being alone?
What happened?
She jumped from the window of room 180. There's blood and biscuits everywhere.
I hope she dies right away. On second thoughts, I hope she suffers quite a bit before she dies. I just hope her pathetic screams can't be heard from my room.
1984, on the other hand, portrays a completely opposite outtake on relationships, however, nevertheless highlights similar ideas of the way love shapes actions and potentially betrayal. The relationship between Winston and Julia is a key driver in their reason for rebellion, as they both felt no harm could come to them. Paradoxically, their relationship actually makes them more susceptible to danger. Contradictory to The Lobster, the idea of love itself is the driving force in their relationship, with almost no other similarities needed. The characterization of both Winston and Julia, however, shows the complexity behind love. They begin as a complete anomaly in a loveless society, referring to each other as darling and precious one, their rebellion spurred on by the hope for a better world. However, the affection they feel for one another is squandered by the party and influences them into complete alienation as Winston feels no love for her. The Lobster in 1984 used the idea of love and relationships to show the complex nature of emotions, and through their ability to manipulate human behavior. Both The Lobster in 1984 used the interaction of characters with the rules of their dystopian societies as a way to communicate the complexity of human behavior and motivation. This is demonstrated through the characters' differing motivations for rebellion, as well as the way in which they go about it. On first glance, at The Lobster, the audience is thrown straight into a dystopian world, created through the drab colour scheme and wide lens camera shots that aim to create a sense of hopelessness. This results in an initial connection to the main character David, who, similar to Winston in 1984, is seen as the everyman, highlighted through the basic clothing and modest lifestyle. The hopes of the audience around the eventual downfall of the oppressive system lies in this idea of the everyman. David's desire to avoid being turned into an animal sparks his initial motivation to escape from his oppressors. However, under the loners, his desire to rebel comes from his yearning for a real, intimate relationship. David's form of rebellion highlights the complexity of his behavior, as he is driven to escape by a multitude of factors, such as love, fear, and the desire for change. However, paradoxically, it also underlines his simplicity, as he is only able to rebel within the boundaries created by the society in which he hopes to escape. David doesn't attempt to question who the controlling power is that represses society, but rather rebels to the only way he knows how, ironically by creating a relationship. In analysing David's actions, the audience can come to understand that the desire to revolt doesn't always come from the conditions that one is held under, but rather the idea of being told what or how to do something. George Orwell creates a similar feeling of hopelessness in 1984 through the seemingly infinite power of the party that Winston must overcome. Winston's motivation to rebel comes from multiple factors, such as the desire for truth and logic, believing that the obvious, the silly, and the true had got to be defended, as well as his desire for freedom of emotion and thought. However, Julia's main hope is for the liberty of relationships. This highlights the complexity of motivation, as while both characters live under the same conditions, Their past experiences and own individual thought can lead to completely different reasons for rebellion. The differing reasons for fighting is also shown in the way in which they go about it, with Winston attempting to attack the party head-on, while Julia takes a more practical approach to rebellion. Any kind of organised revolt against the party, which was bound to be a failure, struck her as stupid. The clever thing was to break the rules and stay alive all the same. The varying rebellious reasons amongst characters in 1984 not only highlights the complexity in human behaviour, but also allows for connection between the characters and the audience, and provides them with varying levels of respect towards their actions. Yorgos Lanthimos and George Orwell used the rebellion against dystopian societies to highlight the complexity of human behaviour and motivation. The endings to both The Lobster and 1984 reveal how the complexity of human behaviour can lead to characterization and the betrayal of loved ones. Throughout The Lobster, David subconsciously battles with societal norms as he attempts to break from oppression through his relationship with the nearsighted woman. The movie shows a potential ending in which David blinds himself to create a similarity with his girlfriend. However, his final decision is never shown, with the audience wonders if David is willing to abandon his idea of love as soon as there is no longer a common trait in the relationship, or whether he will simply walk out of the relationship, creating further complexity in the idea of love and therefore betrayal. The paradox of his decision is that neither action allows him to gain the admiration of the audience. If David blinds himself, he gives in to the pressure of society, while if he runs away, he betrays his lover and destroys the final glimmer of hope. This betrayal of love is also shown in the ending of 1984, as Winston allows the torture to break his love for Julia. Similar to The Lobster, this ending highlights the destruction of hope. The ending highlights the way in which love can be manipulated, resulting in its ever-changing complexity. Complexity in The Lobster in 1984 is expressed through the manipulation of behaviour and the way in which it can lead to characterization. Yorgos Lanthimos' The Lobster and George Orwell's 1984 use similar elements of characterization, paradoxical behaviour, as well as respective medium techniques, in order to provide insight into the complexity behind human behaviour and motivation, especially centred around love and betrayal. The texts show potential futures to our own world, and by accentuating the negatives of these dystopias through the exaggeration of modern-day behaviour, urges a change in the audience.